Welcome back. And we are continuing our video Zoom interviews on the topic of the hidden Black history of the Diocese of Newark. And today we are very lucky and blessed and grateful to have Anne Callaway with us. And she is going to be telling us her story of her experience in the diocese, starting with her origins with Epiphany Church in Orange, and then her experiences with Trinity Church in Newark, and then which we all know eventually became merged with St. Philip's to become our cathedral. So I'm going to keep quiet and I am going to let our guest tell us her story. And Anne, thank you and welcome. And
okay, thank you for inviting me.
Of course.
I just want to make one correction.
Sure,
Trinity
please do.
Cathedral was already a cathedral when St. Philip's joined. It was called Trinity Cathedral. It was already a cathedral. So when St. Philip's joined, we added St. Philip's to the name Trinity and St. Philip's Cathedral because they made it last. They gave it new life, and it became a historic Black cathedral when St. Philip's came. That's what that history is about. And that was a little bit before I came, actually.
Okay.
So at any rate, to keep it short and sweet, I originated from Los Angeles from a Black mission, Episcopal mission. It was St. Martin's Episcopal Mission Church. It was in Watts, California, which is then was a very direct urban portion of Los Angeles, which is now grown out of proportion. It's huge now. And I was baptized there at 8 weeks old. That was in 1936. My parents, my mother is from Louisiana, so pretty much everybody there was Roman Catholic, and my dad's from Oklahoma. He was a Methodist, so they decided when they got married, he didn't want to join the Roman Church, so they became Episcopalians because they had a little bit of Catholic and a little bit of Methodist put together. And that's how my story began as a lifelong Episcopalian. Through that process, in those days, interestingly enough, something has never changed. We had supply priests. Now I'm going back to 1936 when the minister, we called them vicar in those days. The vicar of our church was also the vicar at another church in Pasadena called St. Barnabas, another Black church named after a Black saint, I understand. Our churches were St. Martin, St. Barnabas, and St. Philip's. Those were our, that's how we identified. At any rate, coming forward, as my brother got older, he took a liking to singing, and my mother wanted him to be a part of a boys' choir, which there was no such animal in our community. And so she entered him into the boys' choir at St. Paul's Cathedral, which was our Episcopal diocesan cathedral at the time, located in a very swanky area of Los Angeles. We were the only Black family there. My brother was only the Black place in the choir. But all of these things helped to strengthen our culture and who we are and how we belong and how we hold our own as our own person. And so eventually I was actually confirmed at St. Paul's Cathedral too in 1940 something. At any rate, when I got married, I left and I moved to New Jersey by way of around the world. I married an Army officer, and we settled in New Jersey. We settled in East Orange, New Jersey. Before we lived in New York, and I attended another Black parish called St. Luke's Episcopal Church on Convent Avenue. I think most people know that church. David Johnson and his dad. His dad was at St. Martin's on Lenox Avenue, and he was at St. Luke's on Convent Avenue, and that was in Harlem. And that's where I attended church when I was in New York. Anyway, coming to New Jersey, I moved to East Orange, and we found Epiphany on Pearson Street. And I love the church because it reminded me of St. Martin's, my original mission church in Watts, California. And it was so wonderful and so beautiful. My son, who just turned 59, was baptized at Epiphany on Pearson Street, and was Reverend Father Edwards. Was we call them fathers in those days. We don't call our ministers father anymore. We sometimes we just direct call them by their first name. I don't know what happened there, but we always called our ministers father so and so, or the nurses, the nuns were sister so and so. But now that's all gone. So we have to come up to the spring now. But anyhow, we moved to Montclair, and in the place where we moved, we met an Episcopal minister, and his name was Father Plaskett. And I'm sure that might ring a bell in your mind, Jane. But Father Plaskett was one of the prominent Black ministers in our Diocese of Newark. He was a supply priest at the time to Epiphany, and he also was minister for a church in Montclair, a little church in Montclair. I think it was a St. Luke's, but it was a small St. Luke's, which is now closed. But that also was a Black parish. And so how we met him, and that kind of strengthened our ties with Epiphany even more. We started a guild at Epiphany called St. Anne's Guild. And that was a brand new guild. And in that guild were people like Margaret McLeod and Grace Livingston and Lucille Perrier and myself and about 13 other women, the Callaways. This was Callaway, I'm Callaway. This was another group, prominent families in East Orange. And the interesting thing about that guild is all of us were young women, and we all had a baby at some time or other while our tenure was in that group. So that's what made us famous. I don't know. I haven't been in touch with those ladies in quite a while. Some have passed on. One day I'm going to go to Epiphany and see who's still there. But in leaving, we bought a home in Newark. And so that meant we needed to find a church home in Newark. And so we still attended Trinity. And my mom called me one day and she said, listen, she said, Dillard Robinson has just been made the first Black dean of Trinity Cathedral. And it's in your area in Newark. My mom was in Los Angeles. But you know how old-time Episcopalians are? They know everybody. We had one of those families where we had a priest every Sunday at our dinner table. Or we had a warden, or we had the choir master. We had somebody every Sunday at dinner. So that's how this thing happened. I don't do that, but they did that. But anyway, and she said, you need to go and say hello and let them know and give her my best regards from our family and let them know we're very proud of him. Come to find out, she knew him when he was a curate in the Los Angeles Diocese. This is something this is just how close we connect, okay? And it's so important. And so I decided one Sunday we would go and we would say hello to Dean Robinson, and we went. And of course, he looked at me and he said, you look familiar. I said, well, you don't know me, but you know my family from Los Angeles. He said, Mason, came right out of his mouth immediately. And he said, well, you have to come to church here. Make a long story short, I moved my membership to Trinity Cathedral and became a full-fledged member there. I think my son was about 7 years old. He was born in 63, and Dean Robinson came in 1969. So he was about 7 years old. He's 59. That's how long I've been in that church. So we went and we joined with Dean Robinson. And so it became such a beautiful place to be. We did have a lot of Black members that were coming in because the change was happening at that time. And there were people in the church like Ward Herbert. I knew him. All of these people that we have foundations who's named after Clara Horsley. I worked with her at Eternal Revenue in Newark in the 60s. All of these people were my friends. You know, these are people I grew up with and knew and worked with. And it's very strange not to see this foundation is named after this person. And I knew the person, you know. I remember when they were negotiating to bring in St. Philip's because Trinity was waning very badly. And because of, you know, the folks had moved to the suburbs. They weren't living downtown anymore. and it was waning very badly, and they decided to move St. Philip's, to bring St. Philip's back, because St. Philip's kind of grew out of Trinity. Because I'm also doing the historic research for our church and for the racial committee, and I found out that three of the slaves whose owners belonged to Trinity were three of the people who started St. Philip's. So St. Philip's grew out of Trinity Cathedral. Trinity Cathedral was known to help a lot of parishes in the diocese at that time when they had the money. So they helped everybody, but St. Philip's they were particularly close to. And so I think it was a mutual agreement, because St. Philip's, I think the church had burned and they needed a church home. And where else better to open but right down the street at Trinity? Trinity had no choice but to open the doors and say, come in, because they needed them. They needed another congregation there. So the congregations joined, and we had all these wonderful guilds that started. St. Monica's Guild, which came from Epiphany's, another St. Anne's Guild, which I, of course, joined. The Women of Trinity. We had people like Elizabeth Pettigrew, Dorothy Gould, Newark Board of Education. I can't tell you how many people are historical people, women leaders, Black women leaders who are part of Trinity. Today, Anzella Nelms, a Black woman leader, is a part of Trinity. I found that I was finding historic things going on. I didn't really realize it, because you were engulfed with the people, and the people were like neighbors and friends. But then as you stood back and you thought about it, you began to see what was really happening. And one of the most wonderful things that happened in our history was we decided, well, Dean Robinson always wanted an Episcopal day school. There was not one anywhere nearby. The nearest one was in South Jersey, or you went across the water to St. Thomas. And Dorothy Gould, who was assistant superintendent of Board of Education in Newark, and also a member of Trinity St. She's a St. Philip's bringer. She said, let's do it. And so they formed a committee, and we had dinners, and we had sales, and we had dances, and we did everything we could to form this Episcopal day school. And it happened. It happened. 2 Park Place was our first St. Philip's Academy. At 2 Park Place, I think there were 30 children in the school. And we were so proud of that school. And of course, Dean Robinson eventually passed. He didn't pass, he retired. But Dean Robinson used to attend all the guild meetings. He was always aware of what was going on in the cathedral. He always fought for what he felt was right and righteous as far as Black people were concerned in the diocese and in the church. He had no problem letting you know up front, whomever you were, that this was his most important endeavor, was to bring faith and prayer to people and move people along to help them in a better life. And that's exactly what he did. He had a wonderful young man who studied under him. He was, his name was Daryl. I can't think of his last name now, but he became, he was our young people's leader at one time while he was studying in college. And then he went to theological seminary. He was from Pennsylvania. He became a priest, and he went to Chicago, and he served 20 some years. He also was president of UBE, and he is now retired. Can you believe he's a kid I saw grow up and he's retired? He's retired. I think he's either in Long Island or Florida. I forget which one. But Daryl, if I mention his name, a whole lot of folks out there will know who I'm talking about. But so he also opened the doors to many Black ministers who were coming along as theological seminarians, and he made sure, because of his platform, he was able to move them into places where they needed to be, and they proved to be the best. Well, Dean retired, and he had a glorious retirement, and he had a glorious reign at Trinity Cathedral. He saw Trinity in St. Philip's. He was part of that too, come to pass. He saw his school come to pass. The women of the church, he was very respectful to them. Now, there was some issues. You can't be all sweet and without a little sour. There were issues at that time between Trinity and the diocese and the bishop. And the bishop and the dean did not get along. Everybody knew it. I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know. But they were friendly enemies, you might say. They were respectful to each other. But you did not step on Dean Robinson no kind of way, because he knew everything you knew. He could have been a bishop. He just didn't want to be a bishop. But he knew everything they knew, and he was ready with his paperwork or whatever he needed. He had it ready. And they've been some heated arguments, but Trinity prevailed because Dean Robinson was a fighter. He was the kind of person that you would bring home to dinner and talk to for 2 hours afterward, because he could answer anything you needed to know. He could pray for you. He could hold your hand and make you feel better, and yet he can stand his ground to everybody but God. I'll put it that way. He didn't play with God, and he taught us not to play with him either. But he would stand his ground with everybody else. So the people who served under him, the Whitney Parkers and the Harold Sessums and the Jim Churchmans, these are all prominent families. And I'm just naming like a small amount. There's so many more. The Nelsons, and oh my God, they have their third or fifth generation in the church now. There's so many generations. Gail's mother, her and I served in the same guild together. I remember Gail when she was knee high to a grasshopper. So all of these people served closely with Dean Robinson. We didn't serve him. He made sure you understood we're serving God. We're not serving each other. We're serving God. We're doing what he wants us to do. But in the process, we're going to take care of each other. And we did just that. We had wonderful dinners in the Parish House at Rector Street. That is another. So sorry that that's not going to be there anymore. But history has to move on. And these things, that's why we try to do what we're doing now, to try to preserve as much of this as we possibly can. And the Parish House, I remember 2 beautiful big brown baby grand pianos that were interlocked when you walked in the door. And one of them had lace. It looked like wooden lace that went all the way around. That's how antique it was. I don't know what happened to that piano. I remember the chapel when you walked in the front door going into the chapel. I remember going there and praying. I remember us having services there. I remember that we had a Girls Friendly Society. Do you know who that is? You ever heard of Girls Friendly Society? Oh, see, Girls Friendly Society. All these ladies that I mentioned, we were all members of Girls Friendly Society, because that was an Episcopal girls organization, like the Girl Scouts of America. Well, the Girls Friendly Society was the Episcopal Church Girl Scouts of America. And we had capes and we earned badges and but everything was done in the church. Oh yeah, look it up. And St. Philip's, they had a Girls Friendly Society. Trinity Cathedral didn't have one, but St. Philip's had one. So the richness of more culture that St. Philip's brought was the fact that they had to leave Trinity and form their own culture and their own church, and then come back and bring it with them. And thus, Trinity became a Black historical cathedral. okay? Because of the richness of the ladies who came some way before me and brought all of this riches. We had the sons and daughters of St. Christopher, who we still celebrate. This is an organization that came from the islands, but it's Anglican. And we still celebrate them. They used to fill the church, fill it. And it was a massive, all of this went on with Dean Robinson. He embodied all of that. And then we had a wonderful choir. We had a wonderful cathedral choir, and I was a member of that choir, and I was very pleased to sing in it. And I used to sit down and turn around and look up. I was probably the only one in the church that turned around and looked up, because now the organ's in the back and everything is up there. But when the music hit, because I'm a music person from way back, and I would just turn around. I had to look. My mother sang in the choir. My aunt sang in the choir. My grandmother sang in the choir. Everybody sang in the choir. So I said, well, I guess I got to follow. And I did. After Dean retired, we had a few interims, and then we got Patero Sabuni, who brought a new kind of culture to Trinity. He brought the African diaspora to Trinity because he was from Africa. And he brought people to Trinity to speak to us that we probably would never have gotten, because he knew these people. We had the pleasure of having Bishop Tutu come and celebrate the Mass at Trinity and St. Philip's Cathedral because of Patero Sabuni, because they, of course, had a relationship from Africa, because he grew up, that's where he grew up. And so we were very blessed to have him. And the two little ladies who did a Broadway show called Having Our Say. These two little ladies that this show was based on lived in New York when Dean Sabuni was a minister in one of the churches in New York and went to church. They came to our church one Sunday and they talked, and we asked good. They were just precious. And we didn't even know how famous they were. We just fell in love with them. We had no idea who they were. And all of a sudden, Having Our Say came out. And that's what they kept saying. We always believed in having our say. We didn't connect it. And then when it came out on Broadway, the show was called Having Our Say, and it was their life. And we said, whoa. Well, Dean Sabuni's wife became headmistress of Trinity and St. Philip's Academy. And she helped the school to grow. We worked at it. We had our first graduation. I think it was 10 students from Two Park Place. And then around the corner, right across in Washington Street, the bank went out of business and offered us their building. And so we bought the bank building, and we moved the Episcopal Day School over to that bank building on Washington Street, right in front of Washington Park. And we increased the grade numbers. I think they went to the 6th grade there. I think we had 1 to 5 or something like that. Then they went to the 6th grade. And then eventually Trinity became all the way to high school. So now I can't tell you what happened to Trinity, to St. Philip's Academy. I know it is now a charter school in Newark. I don't know the ramifications of how it left the church and became a charter school. They still call it Philip's Academy. I don't know what happened, because I've never asked, actually, because I've been getting to it, but I haven't got to it yet. So I intend to, though. But at any rate, the school was well known around the country. Christy Whitman, who was then the governor of the state of New Jersey, and I believe she belongs to the church in Milburn, the Episcopal Church in Milburn, whose name escapes me right now. She came to visit St. Philip's Academy, and she said, and I quote, "This is the best kept secret in town." Because these kids left there and went to schools like Pengree. Okay? When they finished their tenure at Trinity, they all went to private schools. Every single kid. And they had their first I think they graduated their first class out of college, and the entire class graduated from college. This is how serious St. Philip's Academy was. And they had backed up people like the airlines companies. They had people on Wall Street. They had, I mean, when Christy Whitman saw what was there, she said, I got to do something. And next thing you know, they had all of this backing. And they got a couple of $1 million gifts. So they were able to do a computer center and a weather center. They did all, I mean, the school was unbelievable. And anybody could come. It wasn't just for Episcopal children. It was open to all children. And they had, and I'm telling you, some of those kids are growing now, and they are so proud that they belong to it. This is a whole story of Trinity and St. Philip's Cathedral by itself. The story of St. Philip's Academy. That is a story by itself that should be, done. And you have to interview people who were involved in it. I don't know who's around now, but you can get some of the students. They'll be very happy to tell you. There's a lot of them around. Some of them are in the church right now. Trinity began to wane a little bit, and we stuck in. We got a young man that came in. His name was Stuart Green, and he became the organist and master of the choristers. And I remember for a while, I was the only alto in the choir. I sang alto and tenor. This was doing our little, the church is interesting. The church grands, and then it diminishes, and then it swells, and then it diminishes. But for some reason, God keeps it moving. We don't know. We don't ask anymore. We just know that things come out of nowhere. When we need something, sometimes we don't even say. But churches who are doing well will send us because they know that's their cathedral. And that's what people have to get to. Yes, it may be it's a historic building. It's the oldest Episcopal building in the United States of America right now. Trinity and St. Philip's Cathedral in Newark is the oldest, and it's rebuilt. Everything but the steeple in the front, that's the old church. Everything in the back is new. But it's still the oldest Episcopal church building in the United States of America. And that's a matter of history. It's serving. It's still serving. It's still serving the community. It still stands gracious and tall, and inside, the people who come love it.